Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode where we're going to be looking at the pages from the Gospel of Matthew. Now, last time we were on this page looking at so move forward in time to the John the Baptist ministry and when Jesus is going to get baptized. Now, we were looking at this page, and also we were comparing it to the the one in Mark. What I wanted to show you this though was when I was filming last time. If you're very sharp-eyed, you'll notice that the panels at the bottom are actually in a different order. This one was at this end. Now, what I realised was that in this second sort of Matthew edition, I'd put the words in for what John the Baptist was saying when he was saying them in the Mark one. So here, she's coming out to get baptized, and he's saying all this, "You brood of vipers," and then he's also saying his arm is out, you see, and he's saying the last bit as well, which is from these stones God could create sons of Abraham. Now, what I did was in this one, you'll notice he's actually in a slightly different position, because he's saying the first bit, "You brood of vipers," and he's pointing at them. But the bit where he's put his arm out to be similar to this one, and again it's slightly different because I've turned his head, and he's saying, "I tell you that from these stones I can raise sons of Abraham." Now, what I realised was that because she's walking out in that panel, it didn't fit with the other one, because she's walking out and he's saying the "from these stones" bit, and then he baptizes her, whereas I had it so that he baptized her and then he says "from these stones," and it didn't work with the other one. So anyway, I rejigged it so that it's the other way around, which is fine, doesn't really make any difference. I just wanted to show this is the same bit, and then he's baptizing people as it says in the narration. Yeah, that was just a little minor change. I just did straight after I filmed the video. I was looking at the video and looking at the other one. I was like, oh, they don't work. So it's easy to fix. So I just swap the panels around. Now, moving on to the new page. Here, John the Baptist says the axe is already at the root of the tree, and those that do not produce fruit will go in the fire. He doesn't say that in Mark, so it's a new one. So we've got, this is Mark. Oops. Sorry, everybody. Go back down a bit. Make this smaller. He goes in Mark. He goes straight on to say, "After me comes one mightier than I," and so what I did was use this panel and then change his position and everything for what he's saying. And then and he's saying that, and then he goes on to say the same thing, "I baptize you with water." So it's interesting, of course, that you can see the parallel between the two, where, you know, in like real life he probably said loads of things, and we've got a recording of most of the things that he says, but not all of them. So he says the axe is at the tree. Actually, I wonder. Oh yeah, he says something different, because in Matthew he says about the water and the sandals and the Holy Spirit. He then goes on to say as well, his winnowing fork is in his hand, and he clear the threshing floor, and the barns chaff from quenchable fire. That's also not in Mark. Mark has less of the text, as it will so frequently see that Matthew is the same, but it has a little bit more text from each of the scenes, essentially. So this picture is the same as before, and but at the top you've got that new one. So yeah, it just sort of shows you the parallel, as I say, but also it's almost like, these panels, perhaps you could have one where you had all the panels, all the different things that people say, but the writers are writing down different bits. But what's good in a comic, of course, is that you're used to seeing. The whole format is like you see a snapshot, and then you skip a couple of seconds, and then you see another snapshot, and then you skip a couple, and you join it all up in your mind, sort of thing. But so you're used to that, and in a way, that's what's happening with the things that are being said by John the Baptist. You know, in the Gospels, we're getting these sort of snapshots of the things that he's saying, but they don't necessarily. It's not like a verbatim script of exactly what he said word for word. It's giving you the important things that he said, and I'm sure if you've ever sat in a preach in church or whatever, and you thought, oh, this is good, I'm going to write the notes down. You don't write it down verbatim. You write down like little sections of what was said, and then you might miss bits, and other people had bits, as in they not had bits. They record more than you did. So anyway, that's the point with that. Then we have this page, which is the same as the other one, when Jesus comes, and that is just literally exactly the same. And then this bit is the page actually that I used on the Kickstarter, where I showed how I would do the following Gospels. So I did the Matthew 1 before, so like this scene, I include all the elements from both Mark and Matthew. And then in Matthew, you get all the text, but in Mark, you didn't get all the text. So again, we can look at the parallel here. Jesus comes, and John says something, and then John says something, and Jesus says something, but you don't get the actual text. Whereas here we get it's the same, but we get this thing. So John kneels down and says, like, I need to baptize you, be baptized by you, not the other way around. And Jesus says, let it be so now. It is proper for us to do so, to fulfill all righteousness. So now I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that this tale needs to be much more facing Jesus. Or indeed, I just moved the whole thing down here. I'm not sure why I did it split like that. Okay, and then they baptize, and then again this whole page is the same as before. And in the background again you can see the stones that John was referring to a minute ago. And okay, and then this page is also the same as in the past, but using the words from Matthew, the voice from heaven, etc. And you've got the two doves, the dove here, and what I could do is link the videos from when I was explaining it when I did Mark, but I can just run over this part again. Again, you see all the crowd here, and Jesus and John, and the idea is here that it says that the Holy Spirit comes down like a dove. Now, I didn't really want to do just a little dove like you might see sometimes, but I thought I'd do it so it was a big Holy Spirit moment with, like fire and stuff like that, but I did it so it's like a dove. So I did it so it's like a mixture as well. So in one sense you've got a dove. I wonder actually if I just make it clear for you. You've got a dove that's like this way round. It's supposed to be like that. But then you've also got a dove that's like this way round. And they're kind of mixed together to give the impression of a dove, but not actually a dove. So, have some fun with that. But like I say, I didn't really want it to just be an actual living flesh and blood dove coming down. Then we get a panel where a lot of it's the same again, where Jesus leaves and he goes into the wilderness, and here you can see him climbing up this sort of cliffs, because the wilderness in the Jerusalem, Israel area, is at a higher altitude than the water. As you might remember, the Dead Sea being like the lowest place, like on land, and the Jordan River feeds into the Dead Sea. The Jordan River itself being very low altitude itself, so the desert is actually much higher up. So you can see Jesus climbing up, and in the background you can see the sort of thing where the deserts, these sort of mountains go up very steeply, and then and on both sides you have these sort of dry hills. On one side it's got this agriculture, and it's a bit less dry, and that's where you get all Jordan, like Jericho, Jerusalem, all the towns. But on the other side it's quite barren, really. So yeah, he's walking through the wilderness. Here you see a slight silhouette looking down on him, and here he is meditating. Here he's lying in the cold, in the because deserts are cold at night. He's wrapped up, and there's lots of scorpions and stuff. Again, here he's meditating and sweating lots because it's so hot in the desert. And there's vultures circling him because he's, gonna die, or whatever they think he's gonna die. And this panel is a different panel. So in the other one, we can't see it. Let me just bring that up. So this one is the Mark one. It's the same, but the last panel is different. Mark says in his, I'm not here to be fair, but that about Jesus being surrounded by the animals and stuff, and Matthew doesn't say it, so that in this we've got the focus not being on the animals but the fasting and praying, and then we're going to get the actual encounter with with Satan when he comes to tempt Jesus. That being the focus. So this is sort of the introduction to that. Okay, so here Jesus is meditating still, or praying, and it says the tempter came to him and said, "If you're the Son of God, turn these stones to bread." Now you can see how I've done Satan here. He looks different. He looks similar to how I did him in the next page, which is the same as before. For reference, this one, which appeared in the Gospel of Mark, where he's essentially a shadow, but there's in the same way that the angels that appeared in other parts of the book have the kind of bluey green teal colour for to represent the Holy Spirit. The devils and demons and Satan has this putrid yellow colour, so it's the idea being that it's the same, it's like spirit but it's corrupted, and the green sicky colour gives a good indication, visual clue, good colour theory, to make you think of things that are corrupted and putrid and that sort of thing, rather than the other colour, which seems sort of fresh and new and and supernatural and stuff like that. Now you'll see as well that he has sort of dots on him. These are glowing spots where it's like these are basically eyes, because these are cherubim. Again, they're covered in eyes. So he doesn't, even though he's opposed to God now, he's still cherubim, so it's supposed to be reminiscent of that. So these lines are like wings. Again, he's got the wings on the side of his head, a bit like the cherubim that we see drawn in other times. And also he in his head, I've got his eyes, two main eyes sort of glowing, and it goes up like this. And but you'll notice as well that the number of eyes on his head is 6 eyes. 6 being linked. Well, so 7, of course, being a divine number that relates to God, and God uses a lot of the time. But 6, obviously 666, but also it's a sign of like man and like being short of God and things like that. So it's his number. But then he, like I say, he's a shadow. He'll be a full-on silhouette in the next page, but here I wanted to show the idea that he's kind of fading in, or he's like only there, ethereal way. Here then Jesus, so he says about the bread, the stones and the bread. Here Jesus looks over and sees the stones that I've drawn them so they're a bit like bread sized, and but also you'll notice that the Satan's not kind of there. He'd be just about in the panel, so it's kind of like he's there, he's not there. Is he there? That's the idea. It's not, it's just supposed to give that feeling that you couldn't just nail it down or touch it or whatever, these spiritual beings. So then Jesus quotes scriptures, and here again what I've done is artistically is use the same image of Jesus with the same background and everything in all the panels. One reason, of course, again, is to make it easier, but also to keep the same camera angle and the same everything. Just makes it feel very still and not slow, but just still. Like he's not moving, so he's obviously like meditating, basically, praying, and Satan's trying to like go at him, but they're not fighting it out or walking along or anything like that. I've got Jesus just trying to pray as the enemy's like trying to say stuff to him and go on, you could give up if you want and stuff like that. Here, the Satan here goes and he's on that side, you'll see. So he was on that side, and then he's not in these panels, and now he's on this side. So again, it's like he's basically moved across invisibly, or he's teleported across, or he's stepped out of reality in one place and stepped in another. It's like he's not limited to a kind of consistent human paradigm like that. So here he is appearing next to him. The whole of the background's gone, and as he's sort of pulling him into a sort of like a vision or potentially teleporting him to a different place, because it says that he takes him to the highest place of the temple. Now, if you read that straight, then he teleports him there, and then they're both standing there at the top of the temple. That's fine, but did he do that, or did he just give them a vision of it? Because he also then shows them every kingdom in the world, and no matter where you were, you couldn't see that. So it's possibly just a vision. But the idea anyway is that he's touching Jesus' shoulder there, and then like pulling him into this vision or this teleportation or whatever. And so the power goes all over the screen. Here then they stand atop the temple. Let's try and get it all on the screen. And he says, if you're the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against the stone. Anyway, he says, do not put the laws to the test. The what's interesting here, we'll come to that in a sec. I'll just tell you about the picture first. So this is the temple, of course. I've drawn it before and did a lot of research into the appearance of the temple. Here I've drawn it from another angle, so we're looking up at them as they stand at the very top there. And they're right on the top of the roof of the temple. It is a very high temple, and you can sort of see from the perspective. The temple as I say, researched it a great deal, read Josephus' description of the temple, him being an eyewitness, of course, and contemporary, and writing it contemporarily. And he describes the look of the temple from afar as like a mountain capped with white. And so from that, I've taken that the temple walls were white. And we know that it had gold all over it because that's in another part of the description. So some people have done it in different ways. Some people have put white columns and gold facade and things like that. There are different interpretations, but I thought that it worked best this way around. The columns are supposed to be topped with palm trees. Okay, and then as you saw, we look at the Pinterest page to more information, which is why I had it up. So there's lots of references here, lots of people drawing the temple or recreating it. This one's interesting because the scale is shown by the little people and stuff. But the main source of visuals is this one from Dura Europus. It's a picture of the temple in a synagogue from Dura Europus, and in this picture you can even see the sort of colours. What you can also see, of course, is that the gold is on the door, on the columns, and not on the wall itself. This picture is later, okay, but like it's from 200 AD. The temple's destroyed in like 70 AD, but it's still potentially within, living memory potentially, although it's a stretch, maybe. Well, what it is certainly within the time period where people would have had pictures of it. So the person who drew this picture probably had a picture. And in this, although it's simplified, we know that the proportions are slightly taller and stuff. You can see some of the details in this picture, which we hear from Josephus and stuff. So on the left and right hand side of the door, the two columns have, you can see it's got spirals around it. It's got these massive golden grape clusters of grapes. In this little model you can see it better. And that's what Josephus tells us all about. But it's interesting then that Josephus tells us, and it's in the Dura Europus picture, two separate sources. And so if the Dura Europus person knew enough to put it on there, when we're saying that they probably had a good source and knew what it looked like. So that's the sort of primary source. Another source is the coins. I'm not sure. We'll see them in a minute, hopefully. But there's lots of renditions. Here it is. This is a coin from which is actually just straight after the temple, or contemporaneous. I can't remember what. But it's so it's this contemporaneous, and again you've got these four columns, and you've got the door in the middle, and it's the two little dots, and that's similar to the Dura Europus where it had the circles on the doors, and all this. And so the shape and everything have been taken from those two primarily, and the dimensions have then been taken from the real place and description and everything. So yeah, that helps with that. The other thing to say was it was interesting because I was when I researched this thing that Satan says to Jesus about the angels. If we find a minute now, Satan actually is quoting from Psalm 91, and in Psalm 91 the base quoting is here, where it says, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in the ways, and lift up your hand, and so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." And what's interesting is, firstly, the psalm is about how God will protect, like, me, So it's written by David, assumedly, or a psalmist, and they're saying, like, Lord is my refuge and my fortress, and I will trust in God, and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a funny one for Satan to choose in the first place. And it's saying, like, God will cover me with his wings, and I'll take refuge, and he's my shield and rampart and everything. I guess he's saying, this whole psalm is about God protecting you. I guess, he'll protect you. But what's interesting then is that is the verse that, like, he stops. And again, it'd been really weird if he'd have said it, because it really undermines his position, which is, so it says, so that you will not strike your foot against the stone, you will tread on the lion and the cobra, you will trample the great lion and the serpent. Well, that's how it is in the NIV. But this verse has a more of a specific, like, the serpent is a bit more forceful, actually. And I noticed it when I was studying it on a website which was referring to the King James, and in the King James it says, you should not dash thy foot against a stone, thou shalt tread on the lion and the adder, so like a normal lion, normal adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample underfoot. So it's like, it's kind of about how Jesus is going to trample on Satan and stuff. And just thought it was really interesting, because, and again, it is in a broader context as well. He's in the wilderness where there's lions and adders and stuff like that, which is one of the reasons in the last page we've got the in the Mark one, I've drawn the lions, and then you've got the scorpions and snakes and stuff. So yeah, it was an interesting parallel between those verses, which I picked up as I was studying it, and then it goes on to the page that we've had seen in Mark's Gospel. If I zoom out, you can see the whole page. It has a lot of detail to it, and what I'll do again is I'll include below the link to the video before, where I went into detail about all the different people that you can see, because the point is that Satan shows Jesus the whole world, but what I thought I was going to do with it before I made the comic, and when I'd looked at other comics and stuff, was to show all the world, but through all history as well. So, like, you can see, see Romans and stuff, but then you can also see, like, skyscrapers and Japan and, and all these sorts of, like, the future and planes. But actually, what somebody pointed out in a preach is that Satan's not outside of time in the way that God is, so he can't see the future. He can't show Jesus a vision of all the kingdoms of the earth throughout time. So he can actually only do it through the kingdoms that are contemporary. So here, though, we see pictures. As I say, we'll have more detail in the other video, but it's the Celtic place. This is actually Gaul, and the Scythians, and this one's China. Let me see if I can turn it around. So you can see Chinese people contemporary with Jesus, and the big temple there. And then we've got India, and a big temple that was there at the time, and the people and how they looked at the time, which was an interesting thing to research. But not just the temple, but you can see a big idol as well. So here's a big Indian idol, and then you've got a big dragon spirit idol in China, and then we got the next one is Egypt, and so again you've got an idol in the background, I chose an idol that looks like has a description a bit like a cherubim. You know, it's got 4 faces that are like rams, and there's a snake and stuff like that, and it has wings which you can just about see going up like this, and it's a Roman province, so you've got the Romans in the middle and this temple. Then on this side you've got the Romans themselves, and in the background you've got Medusa, Gorgon, and again the idols like Poseidon, and or what would he be called? Whatever the Romans call him, Neptune, and then and the other gods there, and so more idols here, and yeah, and the big temple, and then in the centre you've got the temple of God. So yeah, I think basically we're going to leave it on this one. I'll link to the fuller description below. Here you get where Satan is actually speaking to Jesus, because in the Mark one, of course, it was just said Satan tempts Jesus, but in this one it actually tells you, it says, all this I'll give to you if you bow to me. And we'll leave it there. We'll come back next time with what Jesus says in return, but you can see this again, as we were talking about the image of Satan, there's this shadow, and he's got in this sort of the green is his like more true form with wings, and he's like a snake or a dragon, of course, and yeah, so I hope you found this video interesting this week. As I say, we get more details on those pages that I've covered before in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe, and if you're watching on Patreon, thanks so much for being a patron. We couldn't do it without you, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.